project is a Torgue blaster from Borderlands 3. This is the Borderlands 3 design. It was changed slightly between Borderlands 2 and 3. Now, I've gone ahead and skipped a step, and I've sanded and primed all these parts. I haven't exactly figured out what color scheme I'm going for, if I'm going to go for a particular color scheme from the game, or if I'm just going to play it by ear. I think I'm going to doing a combination of several different color schemes, because I've gone ahead and sanded and primed and sanded all the pieces. We can go ahead and jump to the first coat, which I'm going to go for a metallic rattle can spray. I'm just going to see how that looks. Some parts I know I'm going to try to keep the exposed metal look. Some parts I'm going to paint over. So that's going to be the first step, is to hit these parts with rattle can. So I gave a good number of the pieces a once over coat with that metallic rattle can, and some of the parts I'm pleased with how it came out. Some of the parts I don't think I'm going to keep the metal look. So only planning on doing this for certain parts. Some of these parts are going to be half exposed metal, half painted anyway. Like the front fins are going to be partially exposed metal, partially painted. So the first step is to clear the workspace. That's the first step. Also, I'll note that some of these pieces, just in the brief amount of time since I've painted them, some of the metallized paint has started to already chip off. So it's not exactly the most durable paint, so that's something to remember. I'm probably going to need to coat the whole thing in some kind of protective coating anyway. I'll see what I have. So now the next step is to think about what I want highlighted in particular. Some of these parts I want to keep dark. So this is the basic spine of the whole piece, is combination of this and this. Basically run the length of the whole piece. That's the length of the prop. So what I want to do is bring out the paint plate, and those parts are going to be hidden, so I'm going to use a dark gray and just a nice wide brush. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get a holly branch green with a little bit of black. So I'm trying a new camera setup this week. I felt like the other one was too far away. It was really far away, but zoomed in, so it still felt distant. So I'm trying a more up close camera this week. This is going to be a slightly bigger project than the past couple of videos have been. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be splitting up this build into at least 2, but maybe 3 sections, I'm not sure yet. This video is going to be the paint up. So the next video is these giant exhaust pipes that are on the back of the prop. First off, I'm going to be trying something that I have used a couple of times that I'm not particularly good at. I'm going to be using Bondo to smooth these to as much of a mirror finish as possible, and also strengthen them, because honestly there was no proper strong orientation for these to print at that wouldn't create some sort of shear line somewhere. As these are right now, I don't trust these to not snap off. And then the next video is the final glue up and weathering of the piece. While I let those spine pieces finish drying, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start painting pieces like the grip. Now I'm going to do the grip in this matte black color that I've used before. So while I let these dark green pieces dry, I'm going to start on the cylinder. I'm going to keep the actual chamber this silver color for now. I haven't decided. I'm thinking I'm going to stick with this color. Apart from holding onto the chamber, I'm going to paint a medium green. This is kind of the start of the color scheme that I'm going to try to create. I'm going to try to create a color scheme of black, medium green, and highlights of light neon green, and that will sort of be the basis for the rest of the piece. So I'm just gonna use this medium green just as it is and see how this looks. Now Borderlands does have a very cartoony, almost comic book aesthetic, which I like. I seem to have gotten green all over my work mat. Okay, I'm gonna let those dry for a bit. I'm gonna start in on these side panels. A lot of this area is going to be taken up by details later, so right now I just need to fill in the areas in between, and also light green piping on the edge to kind of give it a almost a neon sign look. That's what I'm aiming for. Let's see if that works. There are big sections of this which don't matter if they're painted or not, because I'm just going to end up sanding it off so the glue will stick better. So, in the time that it took for that stuff to dry, the sun came up, so the lighting changed a little bit, but that's alright. My next step is to fill in these pieces with some more of that dark black, basically to make it look like the inside it doesn't stop right there, but there's more internal mechanism hiding away. So I'm gonna start out just blackening the inside and with this small brush, and then I'm gonna take a larger brush and work it around, so kind of just working the brush around the inside to create uneven, it's basically exhaust burns, to darken it and make it look more like an exhaust. Just gonna add some black to the tip and then wipe it away just a little to make it look like it's scorched ever so slightly. So for this heatsink part, I'm going to... Oh, come on. So, with this masking tape, I'm going to be masking off the heatsink, just so I don't have to worry about overspreading. Okay, so I'm aiming to just give light coverage. I'm trying to keep these bolts silver, but it's not the end of the world if they get some on them, because I can hit them with either some rub and buff or a silver Sharpie. So now I'm just going to go with a dry paper towel to see what comes up, to give it kind of a used exposed metal look. It doesn't feel like anything from the Borderlands universe is new. Everything feels like it's been around for a while. It feels like it's been beaten up. So next is to mask these little, basically the screws on the mounting bracket for the heatsink. So I'm giving names and designations, and I'm trying to figure out what each of these little segments do, but in reality they were probably designed by somebody who just said, oh, that would look cool. Alright, so now I'm just going to give this piece a good once over with this green, and like I did with the other piece, after it's covered, I'm going to come back with paper towel to give it a little bit of texture, like that. So I'm trying to just basically visualize the color scheme of it where it stands right now before the glue up. Some of these parts still need to be painted. I know that this piece is not going to be left entirely silver. These panels I know they're going to stay mostly silver, but I want to do some kind of detailing on them. So from what I'm looking at, I think I need more green here. This will be partially green, and I think the rail needs to be. I'm going to do that light coating technique on this middle spine section. This is the part that holds the rear and the grip to the central spine that I was talking about earlier. Now that I have it covered, I'm going to take it off. It's almost like weathering. Instead of getting dirt that is caked on over time, you're getting the paint that is worn off over time. It's kind of the opposite of weathering. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the way these turn out. I think what I want to try next is with black instead of green for this front plate, because I want it to be darker, but I don't want to hide too much of the detail, and I don't want to hide too much of the silver. That's pretty good. I think I might hit it again and give this one a bit more time to dry before wiping it off. Yeah. Now I think I'm going to try doing it with a combination of a little bit of green and a little bit of black. Not sure if that's coming through on camera, but that's very nice looking. So next up is this lime green, and what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to use this very fine tipped detail brush to go into places like bolts and rivets and just add the tiniest bit of green. So what I'm going to do a light effect on some of these panels to give the illusion that it's giving off light. So start with white base coat everywhere you want to have your light effect. Just fill in where you want your light effect to be, such as these little panels. I want it to look like there's a little light emanating from the inside. I'm going to do white in recesses of the cylinder. Alright, so now I'm going to start working on the bright green sections, the little pops of bright green color, just to liven up the piece a little bit. So just these kinds of spots in here. I did the 3 pieces of the cylinder, went ahead and highlighted various light green elements. Now I'm going to start filling in the light green that I want to have inside these little front bolts. This looks to be some kind of indicator panel. There's a divot or a recess on the side of the hammer. I don't know why. Don't know why it's there. Don't know why I want to fill it in. I think it would look interesting. Now, I had this idea to do this almost light piping, almost this neon effect. It almost reminds me of a neon tube on this side panel. I'm going to put some green on this tubing right here, but first I need to base coat it with white. So the light green will go down better against this dark green. While the white border for the fake neon piping dries, I'm going to move on to the top rail. Now what I was thinking for the top rail was to have black down the center, and then on the tops of the rail posts to have a spot of light green. First step is to get my dark black. I'm going to be using a medium-sized brush. I'm going to be putting it on and then wiping it off and just using the pigment that stays behind as the coloring. This style of doing it results in a little bit more transparency with the paint so that you don't lose as much of that metallic undercoat. Next up is the white. I'm going to be putting white on top of the rail posts to help the green go down better. Okay, so I'm going to let that rail dry for a couple minutes, and in the meantime I'm going to return to this green light piping. Now I'm just taking the side of my brush, applying bright green. That way it only applies paint to the top surface. So next up are these little details. And what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to take some very thin down paint that I have in here, and I'm just going to take this paint, it's basically water, and paint the inside. And that has this really nice effect of getting in the little nooks and crannies and getting it way more permeated than I ever could with just paint. I'm going to come back to those. I'm not quite happy with the way they look. They look a little one-dimensional at the moment. I think I want to do something more with them. Oh, the main body sections are done. And now the front paneling. These are two panels that go on the front of the prop, and right now they're just plain silver, but I think I want to do something with them. I haven't figured out what. I'm thinking of masking at this line and then putting a majority of dark green on the front and then accenting certain lines and certain points with a yellow. I'll figure that out and see how it looks. But right now I'm going to mask off that line, or try to. This is very cheap masking tape. So I know I want to make this section a dark green. It's a pretty good base color for what I'm going for. So I let the front plates dry and wiped off any excess because I still like that metal undercolor. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run along this line. The vibe that a lot of the Torgue weapons in the game, they give off this World War II fighter plane vibe. So I want to try to replicate that in some of the color choices and some of the line detail. So I think a yellow line curving down this way along this line would help with that. And then I want to work orange in somewhere this whole panel is yellow and then the seam between the two is orange. This might take a couple of coats. It's a very muted yellow at the moment. I'm gonna let these dry and I'll be back with another layer. This ending might come across as anticlimactic without a big finished shot, but I'll be back in 2 weeks with a video on Bondo, and we'll be doing the exhaust pipes and then the weathering and the glue up after that.